best way to describe a Corvair is it is a true driver's enthusiast car.
One of the things that really attracts me to Corvairs is the fact that we're all greasy knuckle guys. They are by far the best handling automobile that Detroit was making in the 60s.
The cars that are present here today represent some of the best cars that we have in the Corvair hobby today. They come from all over the country and in other countries as well. We're in Buffalo, New York. This is our 35th National Convention. This is our 35th Concours d'Elegance. With these cars, everybody has a different emotional key to it. Some remember a time when they were younger, when Coke was only 5 cents. Some remember them because their fathers drove them, they've had them since the beginning, or they order them personally. For a lot, it's a car they've also aspired to. There's different cars here that represent all different types of Corvair make and model. The coupes, the sedans, the wagons, the FCs, which are forward control cars, and of course our race prepared cars, which is the Yenko Stinger and the Fitch Sprint. The best way to describe a Corvair is it is a true driver's enthusiast car. If you don't like to drive, a Corvair is not for you. But if you love to take a drive, a long drive in the country, hairpin turns, the type of winding road that you'd like to carry yourself on a Saturday afternoon, the Corvair is the right car for you. It's always been that way just because of its very nature of its suspension and its sporty feel.
One thing I found about Corvair people, they're very down-to-earth people. They love their Corvairs, they love everything about them. Not only do they like the cars, they like the atmosphere surrounding Corvairism, if you will. This is a car I purchased on eBay, of all places, and got the car from Oregon, got the car home, and began about a 3-year restoration on the car. Brought the car back to, not original, we went a little bit more modified. I mixed and matched some parts from other Corvairs, but the car's basically all Chevy, all Corvair. We did some interesting things to it. I put a motor in from a late model, put a 140 horsepower engine in it versus the 110 that it originally came with. We put late model seats in it from the 69, took the 64 seats out, and we redid the interior to match the 64 pattern. And I wanted to make it a period look without getting too crazy making them modern. So we stuck with period looking pieces. As you can see, I put on, these are Koenig rims. They are very similar to a Panasport style rim, very prevalent in the 60s on motorsports cars. And put a little air dam from a 69 Chevy Camaro Z28 on the front, which is a period looking piece. And there's even a little BMW on the car, a little BMW M3 spoiler on the trunk, just to spruce up the rear end a little bit. We put on a dual exhaust system, and we did some suspension work to it, and so we've had a good time playing around with it, making it unique without making it out of character for its age. There was something intriguing always as a kid. I was intrigued by the Corvairs, probably because my father couldn't stand them, and immediately I had to like it because, you know, he didn't like them. So, but I remember seeing the Corvair and saying, what an unusual looking car as a kid. And I didn't understand what it was about and how it worked, and I started learning about it. Went to a show here and there, would see a Corvair at a show and saw that it had a flat air-cooled 6-cylinder engine, very similar to a Porsche or Volkswagen style. It was rear-engined, and I started learning about the unique engineering, fully independent suspension in the car, which is very unique for Detroit for its day. To me, it's very almost a European-style automobile. A lot of styling cues from Europe, and as it turned out, a lot of the Europeans ended up, styling cars after this car. It is not what people tend to think about Corvairs. They are very good handling automobiles, and by far the best, in my opinion, handling automobile that Detroit was making in the 60s. Could out-handle any car, including the Corvette.
We take a great deal of pride in what we're able to do with the cars to get them to the level that they're at now. But the best part of this hobby is we meet a lot of great people at the conventions and have a wonderful time. These cars are unique. There's not near as many of them around as there is like a Corvette. If we go to a car show and you sit next to a Corvette, we'll have a lot more people come ask us about the Corvairs than they do at the Corvettes. Corvettes are common. These cars are fairly rare. There's not many of them around. But the best part of it is the people and the great time we have together. It's sat in the building for 27 years and it's full of mice. We had to clean it out and sanitize the thing and completely restore it from the ground up. It's a GM Code 11 color. It's not pure white. It's a little bit off-white, but that's the color that GM used for a long time, many years on their cars. Under the engine lid in the back is the flat 6 air-cooled engine, 180 horsepower, 164 cubic inches. This one's got the optional turbocharger in it. One of the very early engines that General Motors turbocharged was in the Corvair, and it's unique in that regard. It runs down the road, it runs very well, but it's economical also. It gets 24.5 miles a gallon on the highway, and it's very aerodynamic, and it's a great car. Everybody likes to see them when they're on the road. We get a lot of thumbs up, people passing, people alongside the road, a lot of attention.
The Corvair Society of America is really a group of friends who love the Corvair, and we love it whether it is original or modified or raced or rallied, or we use it in an economy run, or we autocross it, or we just show it and it's a trailer queen. We bring everybody together. We want everybody to enjoy the car. When the car was sold, it was a different culture. It was a car that was supposed to compete against the European cars that were invading America at the time. It was an economy car. The Corvair is a unique vehicle in that it applies in a way that technical people are more interested in it than just ordinary people. A lot of engineers are into it because of the technical sophistication in the car. Corvair is American, but it's European. It was a way to buy an American car but have a European handling car. It created a difference rather than one line of Chevrolet. It created a whole line of Chevrolets. The Corvair owners are individualistic from the point of view that they like to be independent, but the car sets them apart. They've joined Corsa because that independence they can share with other people.
Well, I've been a Corvair nut since 1983. I actually got my first Corvair before I got my driver's license. Everything about it is so unusual for that time period. The fact that they really were focusing on the sportiness of it, the handling, the rear engine, the air-cooled. It just kind of appeals to someone who has an engineering interest, I think. We have a lot of engineers who own Corvairs. This 1966 model was the last year they built Corvairs in Canada, one of about 6,000 that year, so much lower production than the US. And there are some unique things about Canadian Corvairs. As with other GM products produced there, they sourced a certain percentage of the parts in Canada, and they also did some different things with the body, like the trunk interior and the engine compartment interior and the underbody are all body color, rather than black or spatter paint. And some of the parts are different, like the ignition coil is a brushed aluminum instead of flat black, and the seat belts were sourced in Canada. They have a GM Canada logo on them. The glass is locally sourced, things like that. There were, out of the 6,000 roughly Corvairs produced in Canada in 1966, 211 of them were Corsa convertibles, and we aren't completely sure at this point, but based on some projections we've been able to do with some samples of the production records, somewhere between 50 and 100 of them had the turbocharged engine, and of those, 10 are known to still exist, including this car. I think the two words I would probably use with this car are timeless beauty. This body style, to me, has an elegance and a European flair that is not out of date even today. And then the color combination is really dramatic, I think. The really intense medium blue, and then with the offsetting colors at the top and the interior paint and the upholstery. Together, they really, I guess you'd say, pop. And so it kind of feels like it's moving when it's sort of standing still. So there was significant accident damage and or rust in all the exterior panels. And so we've actually replaced every exterior panel on the car except for the top half of the right fender. One of the main reasons actually that I'm still into Corvairs is the people. It's like a big family. People are just really down to earth, super, super nice, and really go the extra mile to help each other. And the fact that so many engineers seem to be drawn to the car means that we can do really neat things with these cars. We can keep them on the road, we can make reproduction parts, and also there's a huge aftermarket performance industry for Corvairs. Corvair people really are do-it-yourselfers, and they really look out for each other, and it's just like a big family.
Well, this 1963 Corvair Rampside pickup truck belonged to my son, and it was used as a work truck. He owned it for around 13 years and just beat the heck out of it. He really drove it hard, and it did real well for him. He once loaded it up full of gravel, believe it or not, or logs and so forth, so it was a real work truck. I worked on it for 4 years, restoring it, and I had to replace a lot of the frame sections and so forth. It was extensively restored, but I did all the work, all the welding, all the body work, all the paint, even put on the upholstery also. It was a challenge. I just wanted to, first of all, since the truck was in the family for so long, you know, it was a good old friend and faithful friend. So I just wanted to see if I could bring it back, and it was a real challenge. And I really enjoy working on cars. Driving them, I can, you know, live without, but working on them is a true challenge for me. Everybody's friendly. If you need some help, they're more than willing to help you, and it's just a dedicated group of people that are pretty much devoted to Corvair. One nice thing about them, they're very easy to work on. They're very relatively inexpensive vehicles to buy, and so many classic cars today are getting quite costly to buy. You can pick up a very nice Corvair for $5,000 or $6,000. In many cases less, in some cases more. But that to me was an attraction. But we just wanted a fun vehicle to drive, and they are a lot of fun to drive. I decided I'd try to restore the Rampside because we just like the vehicle so much. It's so practical because of the ramp. You can do so many things. It's a real work vehicle. Although ironically, it doesn't see much work now. It's retired, just like I am.
One of the things that really attracts me to Corvairs, and always has, is the fact that we're all greasy knuckle guys. You know, we've always had a love for cars, but we love them by touching and feeling and playing and working and sharing with anybody that's interested to share with us. Another nice thing about Corvairs is they're probably more affordable than most cars. You can get into cars that, you know, are astronomical price-wise. Corvettes, as an example, can be very expensive. But Corvair is affordable, and there was a lot of them made, fortunately, and there's a lot of parts around for them, and then there's some great suppliers around. They all had air-cooled engines. They were all economy cars of the period when everybody was rushing to try and find out what we should do with gas crunches of the early periods, and so this was General Motors' answer to that. It was successful at first, and then, you know, by 65, the cars had troubles because of some adverse publicity from a book by Ralph Nader, and also some adverse publicity because it wasn't traditional. It was very untraditional, very European. One thing I feel a bit of my youth, you know, I mean, they were a very youthful car. They were fun to be in. You know, there's just things about them that just bring things back. A lot of the Corvair issue is the people. The people that are involved in Corvairs are absolutely wonderful people. And I can't say enough about the people in the clubs, the supporters, the suppliers. There's nobody in the Corvair that ever says anything bad about them. And for some reason, they just really like who they are, and their car helps to identify them. Kind of the history of this with me is in '63, I originally bought a '63 Corvair Monza Spyder convertible from the factory, ordered it, Cordovan brown, saddle interior. Kept it for about 6 months and decided that going to school was more important than having a new car, so I sold the car, bought a Volkswagen, and went back to college. This was a very unusual color. Chevrolet, General Motors back in the 60s and 70s, every once in a while they would do a one-year color only. And this happened to be Chevrolet Division's one-year color only. It's called Cordovan Brown Metallic. It was available on the full Chevrolet line. It was also available on Corvettes. And I've seen some Corvettes, and I've seen a few of the large cars, but it's rarely seen on the Corvair. General Motors got off on this, we got to have more power thing. And so they took the 145 cubic inch engine and they added a turbocharger, special YF Carter carburetor, and they did some special other things to it and bumped it to 150 horsepower. And that was pretty good for 145 cubic inches. You know, that's like the
the 283 vet that cranked out 283 horsepower and things like that. I mean, that was a major milestone, more than 1 horsepower per cubic inch. Unlike the 63 I originally bought, I managed to find a set of the original Kelsey Haynes wire wheels. Now, to kind of put it in perspective, this car, when I bought a car like this in 1963, I paid $2,000 for it. And the Kelsey Haynes wires at that time were a $450 option. So, you know, relative to the value of the car, price of the option, not many Kelsey Haynes wheels were sold. I pined for them. I thought they would be the wheel, and they really complement the car. So as I restored this one, I found a set of Kelsey Haynes wheels, and then I had them disassembled and went through the process, and now I have a set of #1 Kelsey Haynes wheels.
These really are a poor man's Porsche. What has been done to this car, what General Motors did to make these cars competitive, was phenomenal. And they were a very, very elite race car back then, and did very well with racing at SCCA. I guess it's a car that's been picked on and talked about so much as being a mistake of General Motors, but it was a one-off, and it was a really unique, well-engineered car. And when these things get on a racetrack, they prove it. They are phenomenal. I mean, they're still racing today competitively, and that's what makes the Corvair unique. Don Yenko was an avid race driver and wanted to, everybody's heard about the Coco Camaros and the 427 Camaros and Novas. Well, Don Yenko, what he started his field with was with a Corvair. When they came out with the new Corvairs in 1965, the new body style, that didn't have the swing axles like a Volkswagen, he felt that it was a highly competitive car. In fact, there's some article somewhere, I think, where Sterling Moss drove one back then. He says it handles better than most sports cars as a street car. This is a kit car, so you call Don Yenko, and they would send you all the parts and give you all the information how to make your car like his. And this is serial number 306. And it's done up pretty much vintage, exactly like it would have been when he raced it back then. The only thing we've done is we've added a few bars for safety. The seats are different. Some of the roll cage is a little different, but basically the drive line, the components, the suspension is all the way he did it back then. What excites me out of Corvair, I guess it was probably my first real car that I had fun with when I was 16, 17 years old. And I have 2 cars here. I have another car which is up on the show, which is a 64 Spyder that I bought brand new and used to drag race it. So now, since they've just been close and dear to my heart, because I just wanted to be different than other people. Everybody had a Camaro, everybody had a Chevelle, but not many people had Corvairs or drag race them. Every time you do something like this, it is a labor of love because it's countless hours, and there's always these little things when you do something that's a one-off that come back to haunt you. And like I said, if it wasn't for my son and my good friends who are also Corvair fanatics, I would say in the last 2 weeks, we probably put 400 hours into this car. Between the 4 of us, I mean, just every night until 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, and then you do what you have to do in the day, and as soon as you come home, you're back at it again. A lot of work. I raced a Corvair in another class in an improved touring for 10 years. And in that 10-year period, I had a teenage son who was very, very much part of helping me and was always there. He was my biggest supporter. And he died in a drowning accident. So I guess the issue of finishing this car was that he is always going to be with me, and I will always take him for a ride. And that's the labor of love. Anybody who shares a common interest, a lot of the other social issues go away because you're all doing what you love to do. And my little personal thing is when you do something that you love to do this much, it makes Monday morning worthwhile, which is very important because people do have problems with, in life. There's things that we have to put up that are difficult, but this sort of lets you accept it. It just makes life a little bit better for you.